Okay, so we go into the lead with Vigoroth. Twastell has a very favorable matchup with Lantern. As the opponent expecting a switch out, this is not a good situation for Lantern to be in. However, it is able to tank a few body slams before it takes that hit. So we might expect a Thunderbolt coming out of that Lantern in order to burn the shield, but no, it goes over for the Fortress switch. At this point, Vigoroth has a ton of energy saved up. Goes for the body slam. Shouldn't expect a shield from Fortress. It's not the worst matchup for Fortress to be in, given that it's full HP against a well-charged Vigoroth. Vespiquen comes in to deal with this Fortress. It's going to shield whatever comes after this. Heavy slam, fully expected. Rock Tomb would have definitely one-shot this Vespiquen, so it would be quite risky. X-Scissor is going to chip away at this Fortress, which goes shielded. At this point, they're just two high total damage output Mons just slogging at each other with Bug Bite. Heavy Slam comes out. Vespiquen elects not to shield, which is fine. It can tank it, and is basically able to store up some energy for whatever comes next. X-Scissor and Power Gem are fully charged up, and we're just waiting for Blandon to come out with his Lantern, which is a very favorable matchup for Lantern. It's fully expecting to shield the Thunderbolt here. So out comes that Thunderbolt, shielding and going for the X-Scissor. We'll see if Lantern decides to block. Probably not, just given that Lantern is one of the only bulky electric types. So there goes the X-Scissor. Again, two in a row. Again, Lantern is able to tank this pretty well. It's got some stored up energy from the previous matchup, and Thunderbolt really forced that shield on Vespiquen. So out comes Vigoroth, fully expecting a Thunderbolt before it comes out, and sure enough, it's able to get that body slam in before. So out comes his next matchup. Vigoroth has so much energy coming out of this previous matchup from Fortress that it is definitely a force to be reckoned with. Now Venusaur is able to tank that one body slam, but out comes another just a barrage of body slams coming out for that Venusaur, forcing the last shield from Blandon. So Venusaur with a lot of energy against this Lantern is not good news for Twastell. Frenzy Plant is nearly a one-hit knockout. There's not really much that Lantern can do other than hopefully try to get to that Thunderbolt, but it's a very low energy game with that water gun. And at this point, it is GG for Blandon. So we go out for the Lantern lead against Fortress. This is a very interesting matchup in the sense that Fortress getting an Earthquake basically one-shots Lantern, but Lantern getting in a Hydro Pump definitely chips away at it does a huge amount of damage against Fortress. Either one getting a move like Thunderbolt or Heavy Slam is going to be more favorable for Lantern. So at this point, Lantern has a judgment call to make. If it's Earthquake, it's done. And sure enough, he calls the bluff, or he calls the Earthquake rather. And this is a good situation for Lantern to be in, because blocking that Earthquake pretty much solidifies it winning this matchup, because Heavy Slam is going to do close to nothing, being resisted by its water typing. And so Lantern is in a good spot, decent amount of energy, having a Thunderbolt ready to go. Whatever comes next, it just basically uses that Thunderbolt. Expecting a Venusaur, and sure enough, I guess it's Vigoroth coming in. And Vigoroth is not a bad matchup here, because it's able to just basically charge up a lot of energy and hopefully just finish this Lantern off. And it doesn't go for the body slam. It's going to go for the two shields. And it doesn't. Okay, that's a bit of a surprise in my opinion, because now the Vigoroth is pretty much overextended, and it goes down with quite a lot of energy. So I think that was a misplay there, just trying to overfarm that Lantern. Really overextended that Vigoroth. So we'll see which of the two picks comes out. Again, Fortress. Now with less shields in play, this is again a repeat of the previous match. If we can get an Earthquake in on this Lantern, it's really just not a good situation for that Lantern to be in. So Thunderbolt comes out. Fortress can take it. He goes out with the Heavy Slam, hoping for a bait. We'll see if Blandon calls his bluff, and he doesn't. So this is a very interesting spot. If he can get to that Earthquake before the next Thunderbolt, it's going to be GG for that Lantern. And he goes out for the Heavy Slam, calculating that it's just not going to have enough energy to do to get to that Earthquake. I don't know. Up for grabs on that one. But Out comes Vigoroth, is able to finish out that Lantern. It'll be able to take a Thunderbolt, but a Hydro Pump is just going to be devastating here. So out comes the last shield. Vigoroth is able to basically finish up that Lantern with a Body Slam. And so here we go. Good game for Twastell as Vespiquen against Vespiquen, the mirror match. So there's not really much piggybacking to do here because Bug Bite are they're equal turn energy moves. So there's really not much that in the way of piggybacking that these two can go up against each other. So really it just relies on who goes for the Power Gem. Power Gem, one hit knockout against enemy Vespiquen. Twastell is in a really favorable spot. Just render that other Vespiquen basically useless, and he's down a Mon equal shields. Lantern is a very favorable matchup for Lantern here. But at this point, Vespiquen did its job. It was able to take out that Vespiquen, most likely the hardest counter on his lineup for Vigoroth. And, you know, why waste shields? Oh, I guess he goes for the shield against Thunderbolt. And at this point, we're just going for X Scissors. Just chip away at that Lantern and basically render it useless against whatever comes next. And sure enough, Bug Bite's just chipping away at this Lantern. Water Gun does a fair amount of neutral damage, but so does Bug Bite. So at this point, whoever gets that charge move off, and sure enough, Vespiquen is able to get it. Because out of that lower energy charge move, Vespiquen is in a very, very, very favorable situation here. Almost sweeping this entire team. X Scissor is going to do a ton of damage against this Venusaur because Flying and Bug combined is just double resisting both of its grass type moves and taking neutral from Sludge Bomb. So Lantern is not a good matchup at all for this Venusaur, but Water Gun is going to definitely chip away a lot of not super effective damage, but it's just going to chip away at that Venusaur and let Vigoroth finish it up. And that's GG for Twastell. That lead was the pivot point for that match. So we go for Vigoroth against Lantern. Again, favorable matchup for Twastell. We'll see how this plays out in this next match. Previously, Blandon opted to farm up a little bit on that Lantern and not elect for the Thunderbolt to burn off that one shield. And so out comes a Body Slam. Fortress is able to tank a Body Slam very, very well. And this is an interesting matchup in that if Vespiquen is able to just chip away with those X Scissors or land a Power Gem, it's in a pretty good spot. But Heavy Slam does a lot of neutral damage with Stab. So in this matchup, because Fortress came in with like a lower amount of HP, it tends to be very, very equal. So out comes the X Scissors. The advantage that Vespiquen has is that X Scissor is a lot lower energy, so it's able to just finish it up with those Bug Bites and have enough energy to basically shoot off an X Scissor as soon as whatever comes out next, or close to that at least. Now, if Fortress had Rock Tomb, it would be much more threatening to Vespiquen in this situation, but Heavy Slam does a fair amount anyway. So out comes X Scissor against Lantern. Again, we're not expecting to beat Lantern here, but Vespiquen basically did its job, being able to take out that Fortress against his Vigoroth. So Vigoroth has a ton of energy here. Body Slam just comes out. Lantern's pretty much forced to shield. And we're forced to shield too against what that Thunderbolt to be expected. Mainly because Vigoroth is pretty frail. And so out comes Venusaur. Immediate switch to Fortress. And at this point in the game, Venusaur has been rendered pretty much useless against this Fortress. So if the breakdown is as such, Fortress just basically gets to farm this Venusaur. It might use a Heavy Slam, but mainly it just wants to have enough energy to just nuke Lantern with that Earthquake. And sure enough, Frenzy Plant is, at some point it is going to chip away at Fortress, just because it's such a high damage per energy move. But now Fortress has a ton of energy going up against the Lantern matchup, and not shielding here would be very, very risky. So out just comes a barrage of heavy slams here, and no matter what happens, Fortress is able to pull in a lot of weight against this Lantern, finish it off with bug bites, and that's GG for Twastell. So out comes Vespiquen against Noctowl. Expect immediate switch here. Vespiquen is not in a good situation against enemy Noctowl. Vigoroth is, but we'll expect an immediate switch. So we get out that Venusaur. This is not terrible for Twastell, because if he's able to render that Venusaur useless, it's going to be a very interesting matchup for the rest of his mons going in. But Lantern in the back is going to be critical against that Noctowl. So out comes the shield to prevent any damage from that Frenzy Plant. So out comes Body Slam. He's just basically going to be spamming Body Slams, burning shields on that Venusaur so he doesn't lose that matchup. Remember, he counter switched that Venusaur, so he really, really doesn't want to be losing this match against Vigoroth. So if we're able to just take down shields and basically render that Venusaur useless, it's not a bad situation to be in, because Lantern will be able to do a ton of damage. So Venusaur goes down against the energy lead Vigoroth, which is somewhat to be expected. You have to switch very, very fast to reliably beat Vigoroth with a Venusaur. And so now that shields are down, Sky Attack is going to take out that Vigoroth, which is fine at this point. Even an energy lead Noctowl against your Lantern, Lantern doesn't have anything to fear against Noctowl. And, shields down, Fortress is not a matchup you want to be in. I'd much rather have Vespiquen, and sure enough, Vespiquen comes out, expecting a heavy slam here. Even though you don't have shields, Vespiquen is like one of the few bulky bug types saved for Fortress. So it's able to tank that heavy slam, but it's not able to farm for very long, because that second heavy slam is definitely close to within killing range. So we're expecting somewhat of a try to attempt to, I guess, bluff out the Power Gem. Outcome X Scissor. It's not going to do a whole lot of damage since Fortress resists the bug typing from Vespiquen. So again, Heavy Slam is just going to take a lot of neutral damage. So shields down this previous match of Fortress against Vespiquen. Fortress has a clear advantage and able to do get a lot more of a lead in those Heavy Slam attacks. So Heavy Slam again is not going to do almost any damage to Lantern. So Fortress really wanted to be in that matchup where they were both fresh and able to take out the Lantern with an Earthquake. But Lantern at this point is just able to take out Noctowl, finish it up with Water Guns. I suppose Psychic can do a decent amount of damage here, but Sky Attack is going to do close to nothing. Lantern again coming in clutch at the end there. If you pair it with Noctowl, you've basically rendered Noctowl useless, and that is GG for Twastell. So out comes Vespiquen against, again, Vespiquen. So the mirror matchup, we've established that Power Gem landing on an enemy Vespiquen, if you can read when that's going to happen, it's going to be a very, very favorable matchup to you. So we'll see. He goes for the X Scissor, and we'll see if Blandon goes for the Bluff. And he does. Wow. Very risky. Previously he went for Power Gem, and he didn't shield that. And both of them at this point in I guess Twastell is in a less favorable position in that he had to burn a shield against an X Scissor, so he wasn't able to call it bait. So now we're down shields, and if he gets a Power Gem in, it's going to nuke this Vespiquen. And sure enough, didn't want to spend both shields. Probably agree with that, because now Vespiquen is going to be very low on energy. At least maybe make up for this with Lantern having a decent amount of energy coming in against whatever's next. If it's Venusaur, expecting this to switch. If it's Vigoroth, then at least we can burn that shield with Thunderbolt. So out comes Thunderbolt, and he shields. Of course, it's going to do a lot of damage. Vigoroth is in quite a favorable spot. We could expect either a Bulldoze to just take out that Lantern, or Body Slam just to conserve energy and to continue to farm it before the next Thunderbolt. and it's not able to get to that other body slam. It goes for the Thunderbolt, and that's going to do a decent amount, so Vigoroth is forced to shield. We switch out to enemy Vigoroth. Then the mirror match, again, we're at a point here where we're kind of forced to shield. We don't want Vigoroth to be overextended, but energy advantage Vigoroth is a force to be reckoned with. So Lantern at this point getting a Thunderbolt on this Vigoroth is not great news for Vigoroth. So he goes for the Bulldoze because it's just going to do a ton of damage against Lantern, taking it out swiftly, and goes for the enemy Vigoroth, and it seems like he's able to get that body slam to finish it up. So uses up that last bit of energy, but at this point Lantern almost was able to get just finish it off with Water Gun, but again Vigoroth with that low energy charge move is just a force to be reckoned with. GG for Blended.